She cut the line, flashed an HOA badge like it was the FBI, and screamed about her leadership retreat. But what started as entitlement quickly spiraled into federal charges, handcuffs, and national humiliation. You won't believe how far she went, or how it ended. I never thought I'd witness a full-blown meltdown like this in real life. I was just trying to catch a morning flight to Chicago when the chaos unfolded right in front of me at Denver International. The TSA security line was wrapped around itself like a coiled snake, hundreds of tired, impatient travelers inching forward, checking watches and muttering under their breath. I was one of them, caffeinated and resigned to the crawl. And then she appeared. At first, she blended in, mid-50s, professionally dressed, with bleached blonde highlights that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. But then she stepped out of line. Literally. She dragged her designer luggage behind her like it owed her rent and stormed straight toward the front of the queue. "Excuse me. Important person coming through," she barked, pushing past an elderly couple. "I don't wait in lines, I run them." The people around me turned to watch as she barreled forward like some deranged parade marshal. A young mom's stroller was clipped. A businessman politely asked her to return to her place. She responded by flashing a shiny badge at him.
Président, Whispering Pinet HOA.
"I have executive clearance." The man blinked like she just claimed to be royalty. She swept past him without pause. That's when the TSA agents noticed. "Ma'am, you'll need to return to the back of the line," one said, calm but firm. She stopped and straightened her spine, all 5'4" of her. Her chin lifted like she was about to deliver a royal decree. "Do you know who I am?" she snapped. "I manage a $30 million property community. I don't stand in peasant lines." Yes, she actually used the word peasant.
In 2025.
At an airport security checkpoint. The agents looked at each other, saying nothing. But their faces said it all. Here we go. She whipped out her phone and started recording. "I'm documenting this harassment. You'll be hearing from my legal team." I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I'd served on my neighborhood's HOA board for a hot second before quitting because of people exactly like her. That smug, entitled aura, the kind that confuses pool rules with political power. The older TSA agent, with gray streaks at his temples, gave it another go. "Ma'am, your HOA position doesn't grant you special clearance here. This is a federal security area. You need to follow the same procedures as everyone else." She jabbed a finger toward his face. "I know people. Your supervisor's boss will be getting a call. Let me through before I miss my leadership retreat." By now, a crowd had formed. People were quietly filming. The line had stopped moving entirely. She noticed the attention and seemed to lean into it, voice louder, gestures more dramatic. Like she thought this was her moment. The second TSA agent stepped forward. "Ma'am, I need to see your ID and boarding pass." Karen, yes, I'd already decided that was her name, groaned loudly, then rummaged through her designer bag. She slapped a crumpled boarding pass and her ID onto the counter. "Happy now?" I leaned forward, squinting. She was headed to Orlando. Must have been that leadership retreat she kept yelling about. Knowing HOA types, it was probably a weekend seminar on how to harass neighbors over mailbox colors and flagpole height. When they asked her to proceed to the body scanner, she froze like someone had just suggested she walk through fire. "I'm not going through that cancer machine," she declared, loud enough for half the terminal to hear. "I have a medical exemption." "Do you have documentation for that, ma'am?" the agent asked. "It's on file," she snapped.
Check your system.
They did. Of course, there was nothing. Eventually, after several more dramatic sighs and glances at her watch, she agreed to the pat-down, grudgingly. "This is why America is falling behind," she muttered.
Tout much sécuritisateur.
Not enough efficiency. I wasn't sure if she expected applause or agreement, but all she got were blank stares and tighter grips on luggage handles. People were anxious. Some whispered about missing flights. Others just looked exhausted. Me? I was half annoyed, half fascinated. You don't get live performances like this every day. Then came the metal detector. It beeped the second she stepped through. "Ma'am, do you have any metal items on your person?" the male TSA agent asked. She blinked, offended.
Just my jewelry and keys. Nothing significant.
"Please remove them and place them in the bin." She scoffed. These are Tiffany earrings. I'm not tossing them into a filthy plastic box like some pawn shop junk. That did it. People behind me groaned audibly. The line had now been frozen for nearly 20 minutes, all because of one woman who thought her HOA presidency trumped aviation law.
I checked the time again.
My flight was now less than an hour away, and I hadn't even taken my shoes off yet.
Tension buzz de trou the terminal.
Karen, meanwhile, acted like she was in a courtroom drama, the wronged heroine fighting a cruel system. And then, in an almost cinematic twist, she tried to force her way through. I've had enough of this nonsense, she said, grabbing her suitcase and striding toward the secured gate area. You people are incompetent. I'm going to miss my flight. The agent stepped in to block her path. That's when she really lost it.
Don't you dare touch me, she shrieked. This is assault. I know my rights.
The yelling drew attention from further down the terminal. 2 uniformed airport police officers appeared, both with that tired look that said they'd seen one too many travelers like her. What seems to be the problem here? One of them asked. Before the TSA agents could respond, Karen launched into a monologue. These people are discriminating against me, she cried. I am a respected community leader. They're abusing their authority because I challenged their precious little rules. The officers listened, patient but unmoved. When the TSA agents calmly explained the actual sequence of events, the taller officer turned to Karen. Ma'am, if you don't follow the screening procedures, we'll have to escort you out. You may also face legal consequences. She didn't back down. Of course not. Do you know how many lawyers are in my HOA? She snapped.
17.
And they all owe me favors. Karen was now dialing someone on her phone, her fingers trembling not from fear but fury. I'm calling the head of airport security, she said, as if that would make the officers drop their radios and apologize. My neighbor golfs with him every Sunday. You're all going to regret this. The 2 officers exchanged a glance that said everything. They'd heard this song before.
Still, the tale one gave her one last chance. Ma'am, this is your final warning.
Comply with the procedures, or you'll be arrested for interfering with a federal security operation. You'd think that would have made her pause, reflect. But instead, she actually laughed. A short, incredulous burst, as if the idea of her being arrested was pure comedy. Then she tried to sidestep them. That's when everything shifted. The officers moved fast, one on each side, taking her gently but firmly by the arms. Ma'am, you are under arrest for interfering with security procedures and failing to comply with federal directives, one said as they began cuffing her. Karen's expression morphed from smug defiance to stunned disbelief. Her mouth opened, but for a second, no sound came out. Then, finally,
You can't do this.
I'm the president of Whispering Pines HOA. We have 3 community pools and a tennis court. The words echoed absurdly across the terminal. One of her designer sunglasses fell off and clattered to the floor. Her phone dropped from her hand, still recording. As they finished cuffing her and began leading her away, the entire security area stood in stunned silence. You could hear the wheels of rolling suitcases pause. The hum of airport chatter had evaporated. This is a mistake. A huge mistake, she called out, her voice cracking now. I'll have all your badges. My HOA newsletter will hear about this. They turned the corner and disappeared. The silence held for a beat, maybe 2. Then the tension broke.
Scatter d'applause rang out.
People exhaled, chuckled, whispered to each other. The TSA agents, to their credit, got right back to work. The line began to move again, quickly, efficiently, as if the entire system had unclogged. I passed through security 15 minutes later, still slightly stunned. I'd seen arguments at airports before. But this wasn't just a tantrum. It was a full display of delusion dressed as authority. At the gate, people were still buzzing about what had happened. One woman said she'd gotten the whole thing on video. Another said Karen had been charged on the spot with disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and interfering with federal security, serious stuff. Someone else, a man in an airline polo, quietly mentioned that the incident had already been reported to TSA headquarters. She could end up on the no-fly list. Honestly, I wouldn't have been surprised. I boarded my plane wondering if Karen had ever faced a consequence in her life before today. Somehow, I doubted it. 3 weeks later, I was scrolling through local news during a slow afternoon when a headline caught my eye. HOA president convicted after airport outburst. I clicked so fast I nearly dropped my phone. And there she was, Karen Whitfield. Same sunglasses, same defiant jawline, only now her photo was a mugshot. The article detailed everything. She'd been convicted on all charges: disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and interfering with federal security procedures. The judge, according to the piece, didn't buy a word of her leadership retreat excuse. Instead, he handed down a sentence that seemed crafted for maximum humiliation. 6 months of probation. 40 hours of community service.
À 5 dollars fine.
And the kicker, she was banned from flying commercial for 1 year. 1 year. No business class tantrums.
No VIP lounge.
Just highways and long drives. But that wasn't even the most satisfying part. The Whispering Pines HOA board had issued a public statement. They announced her immediate removal as president, citing behavior incompatible with the values and standards of our community.
I almost logged out loud reading that.
The same board that probably cowered under her rule had finally turned on her once she became a PR disaster. And then there was the final paragraph.
The cherry on top.
Karen had been ordered to attend anger management classes and reimburse the TSA for the chaos she caused, estimated at over $10,000 in delays, staffing, and rebooking costs. 10 grand, just because she couldn't stand in line like everyone else. There was even a quote from her outside the courthouse. "This is a travesty of justice," she said. "I was just standing up for my rights as a community leader. This wouldn't have happened if I weren't a strong woman in a position of power." Even after all that, she still didn't get it.
I couldn't stop shaking my head.
It wasn't just the entitlement, it was the complete absence of self-awareness. The belief that leading a neighborhood association somehow made her immune to basic rules the rest of us live by. But what struck me most wasn't her fall. It was the idea that she'd probably walk back into her neighborhood, chin up, convinced she'd been martyred for the cause of good governance. I could already imagine the email she tried to send to the community. "Due to political persecution, I am stepping away, for now." I thought about all the people she must have bulldozed before this. Homeowners fined over flower beds. Kids reprimanded for riding scooters. Elderly couples scolded over mailbox colors. And now, finally, she'd hit a wall she couldn't shout her way through. Part of me felt relief. The other part?
A strange sort of pity.
Because deep down, I think she believed she was the hero of her own story. A week after the article, I found myself at a coffee shop near my neighborhood, sipping a lukewarm latte and overhearing a conversation at the next table. 2 older women were talking about the Whispering Pines newsletter. Apparently, Karen's replacement had already been appointed, a soft-spoken retired school principal named Diane. "She's nothing like Karen," one woman said. "She actually listens." That line stuck with me. She actually listens. A basic expectation. But in the world of HOA tyrants, it felt revolutionary. I kept thinking about Karen. Not because I sympathized, but because I was still trying to understand how someone could convince themselves that authority meant exemption. That a laminated badge from a suburban HOA could override federal law. That bullying others, recording outbursts, and name-dropping golf buddies were valid forms of leadership. And yet, I'd seen it before. Not on that scale, but the same flavor of entitlement. The HOA president who fined my neighbor for wind chimes. The one who threatened to escalate a dispute about a driveway stain. Tiny fiefdoms built on power trips and unchecked egos. Karen was just the extreme version. A cautionary tale in designer heels. The irony, of course, was that in trying so hard to assert her importance, she'd become famous for all the wrong reasons. Her meltdown was now immortalized in airport security training videos, probably dissected frame by frame at leadership retreats she once bragged about attending. Somewhere, a TSA PowerPoint likely read, "How Not to Behave, the Karen Whitfield Incident." I don't know if she learned anything. Maybe the probation, fines, and public shaming cracked the armor. Or maybe she's still ranting to anyone who'll listen, convinced she was railroaded by jealous underlings. But for the rest of us, there was something oddly cathartic about watching her fall. Not because we enjoy other people's pain, but because, for once, the rules applied equally.
No favoritisme.
No, I know someone.
Juste conséquences.
Real ones. As I boarded another flight weeks later, I passed through security smoothly. No drama.
No shooting.
Just the soft rustle of luggage, the occasional beep of the scanner, and people doing what they're supposed to do.
And I slid my shoes back on, I cooked myself smiling.
Not at the memory of her meltdown, but at the rare satisfying justice of it all. Because for once, the loudest person in the room didn't win.